The US President Donald Trump has said he is imposing new hard-hitting sanctions on Iran, which he says will target the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Mr. Trump said the additional sanctions were in response to the shooting down of a US drone and many other things. Ayatollah Khamenei, Iran's highest authority, was singled out, according to the US President, because he was ultimately responsible for the hostile conduct of the regime. Tensions between the two countries have been escalating in recent weeks, with the US blaming Iran for explosions on 2 oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman. Speaking in the Oval Office at the White House, Mr. Trump said he was signing an executive order due to Iran's increasingly provocative actions.
We will continue to increase pressure on Tehran until the regime abandons its dangerous activities and its aspirations, including the pursuit of nuclear weapons, increased enrichment of uranium, development of ballistic missiles, engagement in and support for terrorism, fueling of foreign conflicts, and belligerent acts directed against the United States and its allies.
The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has suffered his worst ever election defeat after a rerun of the Istanbul mayoral election. Tens of thousands of people celebrated on Sunday as main opposition Republican People's Party candidate Ekrem İmamoğlu claimed a decisive victory. Mr. Erdogan had previously said that whoever wins Istanbul wins Turkey. Ekrem İmamoğlu claimed over 54% of the vote, a far wider victory margin than his narrow win 3 months ago. 2 people in Cambodia have been pulled alive from the rubble of a collapsed building more than 2 days after Saturday's disaster. The 2 survivors were given water and taken to hospital in the coastal town of Sikalville. The death toll earlier had risen to 28 at the Chinese-owned construction site. A similar number were reported injured. The 7-story building collapsed on Saturday morning before dawn, with many workers asleep inside. The 2 people were rescued several hours after officials had said they did not believe any more survivors would be found alive. Mauritania's opposition has called for a march to protest against the presidential election results, which declared Mohamed Ould Ghazouani the winner. Speaking to supporters in French, Kani Hamidou called for protests after Mohamed Ahmed Ould Ghazouani, a close ally of the outgoing president Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz, won with 52% of the vote. 3 other opposition candidates have also rejected the result. One of India's biggest cities, home to nearly 5 million people, is almost completely out of drinking water. It's after the main water reserve in Chennai has almost completely dried up. People in the city have for months now been forced to queue for hours every day with water tankers, and when they do receive water, it barely meets the drinking and kitchen standards. Water for sanitation is also scarce, forcing several companies to ask employees to work from home and restaurants to shut down their operations.
They announced that they will give water on ration cards. Now they are giving 2 buckets of water per ration card. How is it enough? In ministers' houses, will this be enough? And 2 buckets of water for 3 days. How is it enough?
A leadership debate between the 2 contenders vying to become the next British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt, has been cancelled. The head-to-head live broadcast was due to take place on Tuesday night, and although Mr. Hunt had agreed to take part, Mr. Johnson has so far declined the invitation. It's after Boris Johnson has faced 3 days of questions over his private life after a row with his partner Carrie Symonds, which was so loud that police were called to her home.
Boris is refusing to do any head-to-head debates in that period. He's refusing to do any difficult media interviews, and when you're Prime Minister, you're going to have to make some very big decisions.
France is bracing itself for a heat wave, with temperatures forecast to exceed 40 degrees Celsius this week, potentially breaking the record for June. Temperatures are expected to climb above 36 degrees until the peak on Thursday and Friday. The north of the country, including Paris, will be the worst affected. Temporary fountains have been put in place, and public pools will stay open later as part of an extreme heat plan. And finally, thousands of Moroccan and international music fans have attended the 22nd edition of the annual Gnawa Festival. The event is a fusion of the traditional music of the Gnawa people mixed with modern-day rock and jazz. The Gnawa people are believed to be descendants of slaves forced out of their homes as part of the global slave trade in the 19th century. They used music to create soothing, rhythmical melodies for their journeys, leading to a nomadic existence until finally settling in several villages across Morocco about a century ago. And that's your international news around the world in 5.